Good morning. You're muted, I think.
There we go. Is it on? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, colleagues. Dr. Mjwaha, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning to you. We are expecting some of our guests to join us physically here. We are expecting Ntate Tsidiso Matona. We are also expecting Miss Poppy Chabalala to join us for this masterclass. So I just need to get a signal from our colleagues that we are all connected, especially virtually. I understand we have over 200 people virtually. Have we opened up for everybody so that we can start? We sorted. Thank you very much. So let me officially open this masterclass. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the National School of Government. My name is Botshabelo Maja. I will be facilitating this masterclass today, which will be led by our esteemed guests, Dr. Mjwaha, who is with us online, Mr. Tsidiso Matona, who will also join us, and we are also expecting Ms. Poppy Chabalala to join us. We are hoping to have a conversation today on building the national system of innovation, whether it's professionalism as art and practice. So we've invited these esteemed guests to join us because in one way or another, they have practiced the art in various ways in their careers. And we believe that they bring with them a wealth of knowledge that could assist us as we are trying to build a professional public sector in South Africa. Without innovation, professionalism becomes limited. So our first guest speaker will be Dr. Phil Mjwaha, who was the Director General of the Department of Science and Technology. He's now duly retired. And we are very proud at the National School of Government that he has since joined us as a senior fellow of the National School of Government. So we've not lost his expertise and knowledge, and that's why we are able to bring him to an engagement such as this and to benefit from his knowledge and experience in this regard. We will then, after we have listened to Dr. Mjwaha, we'll have two responses, one by Mr. Matona, as I was indicating, and the other one by Ms. Poppy Chabalala. And then we'll have a conversation, question and answer. We should be done by 12 o'clock. Dr. Mjwaha, let me straight ahead hand over to you and welcome you. And we're looking forward to your input. Thank you very much. You can go ahead.
Oh, thanks very much, Botshabelo. I hope you can hear me.
Yes. Yes, very well.
Yeah, I indicated when I agreed to Professor and Rufus that I have a slight challenge. I'm in Addis at the moment. We are 1 hour ahead. And then at 11:30, our time here, I need to be in a session where I'm one of the panelists. So I don't know how you want to arrange the session because I may not be available at the time of Q&A at the end after Tsidiso and Poppy have spoken. So you may wish to, perhaps if people have a couple of questions at the end, to just maybe ask those questions, because I have to unfortunately leave here at the hotel because the meeting where I will be speaking as a panelist is at 11:30, or 20 minutes away from where I am in Addis. And if you have been to Addis, you know that there is traffic. So I will speak for about 20 minutes, 30. So we are now 9:11, so by 22 or so. And then, as I say, I'm happy to take questions up until 10 to 5 to at the latest. And then somebody will have to take me uh, to the AU headquarters. I hope you're fine with that.
Yes, we're fine with that. Agreed. We can proceed as such.
Okay. So my story today is in two parts. The first part is about this idea of a national system of innovation, which one was lucky to be part of. Serving as a DG for 18 years helps you to start things from the beginning up to the end, or at least leave them in something that is much more coherent for people to see what you are trying to do. So I'll start from the trajectory of the policies that were developed to build this national system of innovation, and I'll explain what we mean by the national system of innovation as I go along. So most of you would recall that this government did not have a science and technology function, or a department rather, but the function was sitting as a small chief directorate in the Department of Education pre-1994. So the first thing then that we had to do is, do you have a science system that is fit for purpose post-1994? Pre-1994, you know that the government at the time was worried about energy self-sufficiency, armaments, and food security because of the sanctions at that time in South Africa. So the first thing then that we started post-1994, I was involved in policy, but not in the main part of the department, was to start off with a white paper on science, technology, and innovation. It's a 1998 white paper. And it introduced the concept of a national system of innovation. What this means is that you need a set of policies that bring the private sector together, the public sector, mainly the science councils in the university sector, and the general public, to develop policies that are coherent for whether the scientists themselves or whether those that would like to see science changing people's lives, or those that wanted to use science for economic diplomacy, mainly the private sector. So the concept then was coined as a concept that would use science, technology, and innovation to address new social and economic reality post-1994. So that's why it was designed in a way that would bring all of these stakeholders together, align policies that encourage the working together and leveraging expertise from each of these actors, if you like, in a harmonious way. Now, in order for you to bring people together, you need some Bible that they all read from. So in 2002, after the white paper, we then, at the time, developed a document which was called the National Research and Development Strategy. And essentially what this document was trying to do was to say we have areas of science in which South Africa can play a global leadership. And these areas were carefully selected, and they included things like paleosciences. And most of you would know that at the time, there was a lot of work and fossils that were found in Stekfontein. So we thought that we could be world leaders in trying to give the world an understanding of the origins of humankind, or at least contribute to that discussion from the science perspective. We also chose areas such as the Southern Oceans. And most of you would know that we sit on the tip of Africa, bottom of Africa, where the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet in a place called Cape Agalas. And that means that when the two oceans meet, the cold and the warm current oceans, there are a lot of physical and scientific and chemical phenomena that happen. And in fact, it is now believed that a lot of climatic conditions that happen on the western side of Europe are influenced by what happens on the Southern Ocean. So they were chosen in order to then have this laboratory of scientific inquiry that would be done in the Southern Oceans. The third area that was also chosen was what we call southern skies. You can look at the universe from the northern hemisphere, or you can look at the universe from the southern hemisphere. What you see if you are in the northern hemisphere is not the same as what you see in the southern hemisphere. So the idea then of choosing the southern hemisphere as one of the areas where we could build telescopes that would help understand where we come from in the universe and what's happening in the universe and how it's evolving, it made sense to choose this area as a geographic advantage. And then the other area which was chosen was indigenous knowledge systems for obvious reasons, because we have a wealth of knowledge from knowledge holders in the indigenous communities that have not been harnessed for socio-economic growth. We also then chose certain areas such as advanced manufacturing, because at the time we thought science could play an important role, poverty alleviation, biotechnology strategy, and innovation fund. So these areas, if you like, meant that this national research and development strategy was working in two legs. One leg, the leg of scientific inquiry on the areas of geographic advantage that I've shared with you earlier on. And then those areas that are really trying to address socio-economic challenges, whether it's advancing manufacturing or investing in new areas of science such as biotechnology at the time, poverty alleviation, and encourage innovation through the Innovation Fund. So this took us up to 2006, where in 2006, we introduced a new document called the 10-Year Innovation Plan. And this document was to accelerate the agenda of the previous strategy of 2002, so that we can also try and strengthen some institutional arrangements that we had identified as gaps in our journey to have a national system of innovation that addresses socioeconomic impacts. So in doing that, we introduced three instruments, institutional arrangements. The first one was to introduce the space agency, because we felt that South Africa would benefit from having an entity that uses satellite imagery for socioeconomic impact. I will say a few words about the space agency later. The second institutional arrangement that we introduced was what we called the Technology Innovation Agency. Even though the Innovation Fund was introduced around 2004-05, we felt that we needed to consolidate all innovation instruments under one agency, the Technology Innovation Agency. And then we also thought that if you are in the knowledge game, it is important for you to have instruments to manage intellectual property, because that's what knowledge as a commodity is measured. And therefore, we spend a lot of time thinking about an intellectual property regime for knowledge generation in South Africa that would ensure that knowledge is protected in South Africa, so that if anybody uses that knowledge, we could get benefits, or of course sue them if we're not getting the benefits. But also to encourage universities and science councils or anybody who receives public funds to try and make money out of knowledge which is commercializable. So that's when we started working with universities to develop what we call offices of technology transfer. So they develop policies, make sure they understand all the intellectual property that is generated in the institution, but also applied to the Technology Innovation Agency for taking some of these ideas into marketplace. So we then established an entity within the department called the National Intellectual Property Management Office. So it's an small agency that then helps the institution in building this capacity for IP management and exploitation. So we were very, very happy about this because we thought we started then to have a set of programs that would really assist the country to address the socioeconomic challenges that we had. And then lately, we then had a new white paper in 2019, 2018, I think, where we felt that we needed now to look at what is the overarching policy for government, drawing on the lessons, that we had learned since 2002, 1994, and to modernize, if you like, our policy. So we then developed this new white paper on science, technology, and innovation, and an implementation plan, which is called the Decadal 10-Year Plan, 2022-2032. So the focus really of this document is to say we need now to increase our scientific capacity in South Africa if we want to really tackle the problems that we need and that are emerging. And then we also wanted to increase the impact of utilization of knowledge for economic impact. And as a result of this, and you know that one of the, if you like, the highlights of our investments in the geographic area of astronomy is what we now call the SKA. It's a global project in the Northern Cape. It's still going to require a lot of funding, a lot of young people to analyze the data that will be coming out of the telescope. But this has helped to put South Africa on the map. And of course, we continue to invest in paleosciences and interesting work that is coming from the Southern Oceans and the work that we're doing. So we want to continue now on this work as part of our journey of showing that the science system in South Africa can compete with the global scientific system, even though it's small, but also trying to expand it. We've also been looking at what are the key high-level projects that the National System of Innovation can now do in order to respond to some of the problems that we have. And I'll highlight three of these. The first one is we believe that with the universities that we have in South Africa and some public institutions such as BioWork, where government owns 48% of the company that produces, well, doesn't produce, but it receives the ingredient from international partners and then put the ingredient into vaccine that we then use to vaccinate children. But we are putting BioVac and Afrigen, some of the private sector companies, and Aspen, together with the universities to look at whether we could start from, if you like, research lab to produce some of these vaccines in South Africa, so we don't depend on overseas institutions to make vaccines for us. So at the moment, we do what we call fill and finish. We get this ingredient, we put it in the vials and get the liquid there, and then send it and distribute to hospitals and those who need the vaccines. But we now want to make the ingredient itself. And we believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, we should be able to produce some of these vaccines. And of course, the entire ecosystem of vaccine manufacturing, and it's quite a big multi-billion industry, which would create large industries and employ large numbers of people. So we are working with the African Center for Disease Control and the presidency on what South Africa can do to drive this agenda, both for ourselves in South Africa, but also for the continent as a whole. The second one, we felt that we were making some significant progress on harnessing innovations from the universities and recipients of public funds. So we were lucky enough to go to Treasury and convince them that having an innovation fund of approximately 1 billion rands every 3 years is a good number, even though it's not what we would like to do. But let's start with R1 billion and see whether this money would be able to take innovations that we are investing in with public funds into the marketplace. And we designed this fund in such a way that it's able to leverage additional funding from the private sector. And we are happy to report that for every rand that the public has put, we're able to attract approximately 3 times that amount from the private sector. So we've had co-investment by the private sector, the likes of PIC, SA SME Fund, to also co-invest with us so that we can take these innovations into the marketplace. And recently we discovered that there are a number of young students in the universities and TVET colleges that have innovative ideas that they would like to take into the marketplace. So last year, we launched a very modest fund of about 30 to 50 million rands from the government initially, but we hope to leverage the same amount or 3 times that amount from the private sector to provide small amounts of funding that young people requests to take their ideas to the marketplace, asking 300,000 rands, 500,000 rand, but ideas that could really change the lives of the young people themselves so they don't have to look for jobs, but they would have their own companies and employ other young people, but also make a significant, provide significant solution to society. One such is a young person that was at BUT who wanted to use in the real estate a foolproof mechanism of making sure that there's no corruption. So he's using a simple blockchain technology in the real estate environment. And apparently this is a well sought out innovation. She wanted a few amounts of money, 300,000, and then take this thing and make it a sizable SMME company. It's just one example, there are many, many, many others. So we've done this, and also we want to draw on the lessons that we learned from COVID as part of making impact and scaling up some of the innovations that I said came from all the previous work that we've done. And one of the legs of this new decadal plan is to support the state to have the capacity that it needs to make certain decisions. Now, most of you, in order to give you a better sense of what I'm talking about, would remember that during COVID, we didn't have enough ventilators. And the science, technology, and innovation system was asked to come together and use the expertise that they have in order to build ventilators that we needed. You remember that COVID, amongst other challenges, was people were struggling to breathe, and these ventilators, because of the disruptions of the supply chains globally, it was not easy to have some of them. And we are happy to say that we were able to put together ventilators, and working with the DTIC, these ventilators are now being manufactured to be part of the products that will be exported to the rest of the African continent. We also developed the National Policy Data Observatory as part of strengthening the decisions that were needed at the time of COVID. You'd recall that the scientists of South Africa discovered a variant which was called Omicron, which was one of the deadly variants of COVID-19. But most importantly is that discovery helped us as South Africans to know whether the vaccines that we had bought at that time were going to be efficacious to, if you remember, to the vaccines that we were going to inject people. And it's a very important, if you like, decision. Otherwise, you would inject people with these vaccines only to find that because of the variant at the time, it was not effective. So it's a very important contribution from the science system. The one that I also want to talk about is, you'd recall that there was a huge challenge as to whether people want or don't want to be vaccinated. And we're using the science infrastructure and the surveys that are usually done by the Human Sciences Research Councils to provide government with an understanding as to why people were not wanting to be vaccinated, but also to scale appropriately the vaccines that we could then buy in South Africa. So lastly, now we are at the stage where we are very, very happy with the progress that was made with the Department of Monitoring, what is it? Monitoring and Evaluation, DPME. They have agreed that they will work with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation to take budgets for science, technology and innovation from other government departments. What that means is that if there's a government department that has investments in science and technology, they will be pulled together just to get a sense of how much we are investing and what we're doing in science, technology, and innovation, and whether what we're doing is enough. So that's a very important development in the National Science and Technology Innovation Policy. And then the second one is something which is called an Inter-Ministerial Committee on Science, Technology, and Innovation, together with a presidential plenary. The presidential plenary met last year, and the president announced a 1 billion rand PhD program, which he used to challenge the private sector to invest about 6 billion, so that we'll have a 7 billion fund to fund those people who want to be in the game of knowledge generation and using knowledge for socio-economic development. And then, of course, to enhance the role of science technology across society. So that was my first story that I wanted to tell you. But the second part of the story in the briefing from the National School of Government team was, if you are able to do this, the team that you worked with, Dr. Joachim, for you to achieve so many things in such a short space of time, of course, you didn't do this alone. And this is where the professionalization of the public service is important. I am not able to tell you today how I survived working with 5 ministers, but it's one of those skills that you need to perfect, because if you don't perfect it, you will not be able to have such a long period of time to develop the work to the level at which I've just shared with you. And that helped us because most of the ministers that we worked with trusted and believed on what we wanted to do. But most importantly, they gave us all the necessary delegations to appoint really competent staff. And I'm very proud that over the years that I worked as a DG in this journey that I've shared with you, largely the staff that I worked with in the department was extremely professional. And as I say, it's because the ministers trusted us with the delegations to appoint staff and make sure that we have people who knew what they were doing. And our job was just to manage and work with them in order to deliver what needed to be done. Of course, it doesn't come for free. It comes with a tight monitoring by the ministers, and we were happy with being tightly monitored on what we were doing. And we think that the frameworks that were agreed upon on how to respond and work with the ministers for them to take these ideas to cabinet were all successful. So thanks to all the DSI staff, and thanks to the skill set that we had in the department with the team that I had to be able to achieve all of what I have shared with you in the last 20 minutes or so. So that's where I'd like to end, and I would be more than happy to take questions. And I hope I was clear enough since I'm so far away from where you are. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mjwacha. So we are going to allow for some questions because as we indicated at the beginning, Dr. Mjwacha will be leaving us earlier than planned. So Mepopi Chabalala is online, and Mr. Tsidiso Matuna is in the room with us. But before we go to them, we want to open up a conversation first with Dr. Mjwacha from those that are attending online and physically here, there might be questions or clarity that people are looking for. So this is an opportunity for that, so that we take advantage of Dr. Mjwacha's presence before he leaves. I thought I saw one question online. If we can just pick it up. Okay. Okay, so we've enabled colleagues online to ask questions. We are also open to questions in the room. Whilst colleagues are thinking through this thing, I just want to engage you on one thing, Dr. Mjwacha, that has fascinated me. Is this thing of knowledge production slash patents and the role of higher education institutions in South Africa in knowledge production and patenting. I personally, and this is not based on anything scientific, so that's why it's a question. I'm of the view that higher education institutions in South Africa have completely dropped the ball with regards to the issue of patenting. In the little research that I've done myself over the last few years, I have found universities in other countries to be more proud, to be eager and willing to display how many patents per annum they've been able to register, in which fields, for what purpose. I have never found one single university in South Africa trying to do that. What has been your reading of that space?
Yes, thanks very much. Maybe three responses. The first is South Africa was not focusing on patenting in the early part of the journey that I've referred to you on. And the focus was mainly on publications. And in fact, in our policy development, we incentivized universities for publications. So as you would know in management, what gets done, when you reward people for certain things, that's what they will do. So what we have then started to do working with the Department of Higher Education and Training is that we need to develop the same incentives, if not better, for the universities that patent, so that we don't skew the knowledge outputs towards only publications, which usually don't generate money. So before we finalize the white paper and before we develop the decadal plan 2022-2032, we asked the National Advisory Council on Innovation, an equivalent of the CHE, to give us a sense of, over the last 10 years, how far have we gone with patenting? And we are starting to see a slight increase. If you recall that in 2006, we set up the National Intellectual Property Management Office to track the patents, and working, of course, with the offices of technology transfer. So there's been a slight increase in the patents. But thirdly, are we happy with the patents that we are generating out of these institutions? The answer is no. We are nowhere near what you said as your observation of universities in other parts of the world. So this requires the Department of Higher Education and Training, the Department of Trade and Industry, and ourselves, DSTI, to look at incentives for patenting. But also remember that patenting costs a lot of money. So you incentivize, but you also need to make sure that you support the process of doing patents. Sometimes you have to keep patents longer in the patent office by paying money so that people cannot exploit your patent. So it's a new area of policy that I think still requires a lot of work, but we believe that we are starting to see the turnaround. But I agree with you, we're not where we'd like it to be.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Mjwaha. Online, we have 3 questions, which I will just read up for you. So the first question that we have is from Ms. Louise Lepan, and she's asking, in the DSI, they use the e-system for things like submissions and leave. How have you shared the best practice with other government departments to improve the public service ecosystem? That's the first question. The second question is from Mr. Stephen Hendricks. And the question is, how can the Department of Science and Technology, which you've just retired from, become more engaging in the high school science and maths for both educators and scholars? And then the third question is from Ms. Pumla Williams. Thanks, Doctor, for your inspiring message. And she asks, I just want to check if there is any message of hope you can give on the uptake on young people in the Science and Technology Innovation Hub. So she's basically trying to find out what can you say or do to encourage uptake of science and technology. The last one, and then we will take the second round before you leave. The last one is from Ms. Stella Vuma, and she is asking on patents, comment on patenting. Of course, she says it can be costly, as you've said so yourself, requiring legal expertise and funding that some institutions may lack. You've touched on that. The other challenge is the complex ownership issues wherein one needs to determine the ownership of intellectual property. It can be complicated, especially when there are multiple parties involved who contributed to the project. And then her last point is that academics are overly burdened with administrative barriers, like institutional policies and bureaucratic processes, which may hinder timely patenting. Your inputs on those 4 points, Dr. Mjwaha?
Yes, thanks very much to Luis. The first question, the way that we share some of these, if you like, IT-based systems, we've been trying to develop a relationship with CPSI, I think, Center for
Yes.
Public Service and Innovation.
Yes.
Last time, I think there was even a discussion as to whether it should be part of the DSI family, because there are a number of innovations in government that
Sorry. I shouldn't have done
you know something, maybe I don't know, on these innovations in the public sector that need to be shared. So in our cases, we would share this through a number of platforms that would be invited in. In fact, in the last days, I don't know if the department continues with some of these innovations, is that we should really introduce them a lot more. For an example, there are a number of routine things that we should digitize in government. So we had said we would start to digitize things, and then we would automate, and then thirdly, we would digitalize, where we would use AI in order to make decisions intelligently. So maybe, as I have said, working with CPSI, that would be the best platform to share some of these lessons on how best as government we could share, not only from the DSTI. I know there are other government departments that have innovations on how to be a bit more productive using the modern IT tools. So that was our thinking. With Hendricks on more engaging on schools, there are a number of programs that we have, or at least at the DSI. We used to, first of all, we have a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Basic Education, because this is not our mandate. So what we agree with them is that if there are new ways of delivering, for instance, curriculum using ICT platforms, we could pilot that, and then we could then hand them over to them for the uptake of some of these skills. We also have what we call a science engagement program, which is run by the National Research Foundation. It's an agency which is called South African Agency for the Advancement of Science and Technology. As I say, it's an agency within the National Research Foundation, and its job is to really engage with young people to indicate to them the careers in science and how they could come to either universities or follow this particular career. So that's how we do this. And then every year we have something which we call the National Science Week, where we launch in one province programs of science, technology, and innovation for young people, but for the public in general. And then, as I say, all the provinces, and we have things which we call science centers that then excite people about scientific activities. And then on Pumla Williams, the message of hope is for young people is that, in fact, one of the things I'll be speaking about in the 11:30 meeting that I'm attending, 10:30 South African time, is how can we use digital skills for addressing the youth dividend that we have in the continent. And we believe it's not a complicated thing. On the side event here, they have booths, booths of institutions that are showing young people at grade 8 and grade 10 that you can do coding even if you don't have matric. And as you know, things like coding, integrating sensors to small chips is the future in terms of what we need in order to deal with the youth dividend. But we can increase those programs. On the 10th and 11th of November, we will be meeting with private sector companies that want to increase the number of young people in this area to about 10,000. And the private sector has said we need these skills because at the moment we import these skills from India. So the message then to young people is that, first of all, they shouldn't be scared of science, technology, and innovation. It's the future. Everything about society, whether you buy the food with an Uber Eats app or whatever app, whether you want to drive the car in future, drive it, sleep whilst it's driving, whilst you sleep. That's the way that the world would look like in terms of using innovation for improving the way we live in society. So I don't think they should be scared of science and the fact that they should look for institutions um, that can work with them to encourage them. But I thought the question was also asking about the uptake of science, technology, and innovations that the department is working on. And as I indicated, that this new interministerial committee, we believe, would be a vehicle of the uptake of the science, technology, and innovation for the needs of those government departments. Just to give an example, during the disasters in KZN and also, I think, in Cape Town, we used satellite imagery to provide, if you like, an early warning, but also how the disaster over days would look like, because you can take satellite imagery and you can do modeling. So there are a lot of innovations that the science system has done, which needs to be taken up by various other government departments. And we hope that through this new governance arrangement, the IMC and the presidential plenary and the taking of budgets, we will move closer to the uptake part. And then on Stella, the issue, as you have indicated that I'd responded to part of the question. Yes, so maybe I want to respond to two issues she's raised, the ownership issue and the academic bureaucracy. On the ownership issue, the proposal from policy is that if a young person or a researcher develops a knowledge that could be patented, they must have some reward that come to them. But because you are working in an institution, the institution also needs to get some reward. So in order for issues of litigation is probably better to be owned by an institution, but the institution has an arrangement that says if this knowledge is exploited, and of course the institution provides resources, as a student or as a researcher, you'll get a third, and maybe a third is given to the institution because of its investment or whatever percentage. So there are some guidelines on how this ownership issue can be handled. Of course, as a state, sometimes we feel certain IP, if it's publicly funded, needs to be owned by the state. These are things that are still controversial, and sometimes the institutions refuse. But we're looking at the constitutional arrangements in South Africa, whether this can also be done. On the academic bureaucracy, I agree, but that's why we encourage and support the institutions in establishing what we call the offices of technology transfer. These are functions that stay in the institutions. We partly fund them. We give them about 40% of the funding for the staff to remove the burden from the academics in managing the aspects of patenting. Whether that's enough, we don't know, but we review these policies, we review what the institutions tell us. And I guess as the NSI expands and as we get more funding, we will keep reducing the burden from the academics on the management of patents and knowledge in general. Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you, Dr. Mjwara. Just the last two before we release you. There are just two more. The first one is from Mpilo Mkabela, and Mpilo is asking, in terms of youth funding for startup business, you had mentioned that government has certain platforms for funding. I would like to know what are those platforms and how does a company that would like to provide a service for youth development go about working with government, where government pays for the service and the company goes and provides youth development for the youth, especially looking at township areas where kids don't have the resources to pay for these youth development talks. The second one is from Zuko Makaula. And Zuko is asking, how can innovation address South Africa's socioeconomic challenges? Are there any examples based on your experience that you can share? So that would be those two, and then we will release you. Go ahead, Dr. Mjwara.
Yeah, thanks very much. On the youth funding, yes, we have two funds which are managed. The first is managed by the Technology Innovation Agency. So if Mpilo could reach out to them, they are in Pretoria. If you Google them here, Technology Innovation Agency, they'll be able to guide you through on both issues, both the funding issues, but how they can link you up with the potential uptake of the innovation that a young person is developing. It's a semi-well-oiled system within the Technology Innovation Agency. And then we've introduced this Higher Education Innovation Fund for those who are having innovative ideas and they are part of the university or the TVET system. And then on Zuko's question, I'm going to maybe give three examples. The first is the problem of taxis and the taxi owners and drivers. The taxi owners don't know how many passengers that the driver ferried up and down during the day. So a small innovation that was introduced and funded by the Technology Innovation Agency would have a system that would be installed in the taxi that has a camera mounted on the taxi. And every time, of course, people come in, you'll be able to know how many people were. So this was developed by this gentleman, worked with the taxi owners, and the taxi owners were very excited about this because it provided them with at least certainty as to whether when I'm getting 50,000 a day, is it really 50,000 worth of trips, or there's a 20,000 that has disappeared somewhere. So I think his company has now moved into a company that has a turnover of about, I think, 50 to 100 million rands a year, and I'm sure he will continue to expand. So that's one of the innovation to address a particular challenge in society. The second one is a lot of mining companies find themselves in a situation where they've got mining operations offshore. And sometimes it's expensive to be flying to South America or anywhere in the world, the rest of the continent, to monitor mining operations. So a group of young engineers who used to work as data analysts from the Square Kilometer Array set up a company. And this company has been working with these mining companies to integrate sensors collecting data of the mining operations and then using the cloud to store the data, and it's available to the people who like to monitor operations 24/7. And I can talk about many others. And the question really for us is how can we scale these things up so that they make the impact that we are looking for. So I'm really sorry that I have to leave you, but I hope I've been able to give you insights of the work that we've done and how we manage the human resources that we had in the department professionally in order to deliver what I think was a wonderful package over the last 15 years or so at the helm of the DSI. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Mjwaka, much appreciated. Thank you. We do have respondents. The good news is that we record these sessions. So after your meeting, you can read up or listen in on a video as to the good things and the bad things they've said about you. You have their numbers. If they say bad things about you, you can call them tonight and then engage them on a one-on-one basis. The first one is Mr. Tsidiso Matona, who will be responding in your absence. Thank you very much, Dr. Mjwaka.
Thank you very much. All the best, Tsidiso. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Bye.
Where do you want to put it? Okay. Good morning. Greetings to the presenter as he leaves, Dr. Bill Mjwaka. Greetings to the principal, colleagues of the NSGE, attendees, both physical and online. I'm really honored to be a respondent to what has been an illustrious career of a public servant, very respected public servant. I thought that in my response, I will use the opportunity of what Phil has said to elucidate a few lessons, which I hope would be lessons for the state, lessons for the developmental state that we aspire to, but also lessons that I think the school should be building on into its offerings. So there are three aspects to my response. And you could think about these as if you like, success factors. Success factors that have gone into making what Phil has shared as his career. The first one is to try to periodize Dr. Mjwaka's experience. The second aspect is to reflect on strategic issues, strategic vision, strategic purpose, and the capacities that have been at play, in that regard. And finally, I'd like to make some reflections on Phil, the person, on the personality, in terms of his attributes as an administrator, as a leader, as a technocrat. So if I recall, Phil and I, we became DG 1 year apart. I was first DG, I think 2005, and I think he was DG a year later. So we were fellow travelers, I think, in what was a very promising time in the evolution of government. It was a period, if you like, that where we were just transitioning from what I call the establishment phase of the democratic state, setting up shop in terms of policy frameworks, legal frameworks, and institutional frameworks. This is about planning, really, in the discipline of planning, what were we going to be embarking upon in the decades ahead? I think one of the distinctive characteristics of this period, and something that in a sense really has gone to support what Phil has shared with you, is that technocrats, the role of technocrats, had enormous room. Technocrats were allowed the space to create the so-called political and administrative interface was the healthiest I can ever remember in a state. These were distinct spaces, but interacting in very productive ways. I think, in a sense, you could see the possibility of the emergence of what I call a technocrat-driven government. And in the notice of this masterclass, there was reference to the presidents under which Phil served. This period, I think, was a period of Thabo Mbeki, who was very clear, that technocrats, needed to be given the space, had confidence in the technocrats, and by virtue of that confidence that the state had, it was inspiring, because we dare not fail our political principles. That phase was meant to seamlessly transition to the execution phase, the implementation phase, and the phase for measurement of what was being done in government. And it was a time, I think, when the Department of Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation was conceived. But as we know now, in retrospect, that transition was disrupted, was interrupted. Increasingly, lines between the political and administrative got blurred. It was also a period that has come to be known as a period of state capture. In regard to, in fact, it's a period that I don't think we have successfully emerged from yet. I think we're still grappling with recapturing, that sort of outlook to state and governance. I think it's work in progress. It'll take a while, I think, until we can restore that sort of order of things, so to speak. The second aspect I'd like to comment on was the strategic visioning, the sense of mission that Phil performed under. Phil was fortunate to have ministers as his bosses with a good dose of the sense of mission, the sense of strategic visioning, and I'm thinking in particular about Minister Naledi Pandor. I can't remember the sequence of the ministers under which Phil served, but I think I definitely remember Minister Pandor. I remember Derek Hanekom, if I'm not mistaken, and then of course Minister Blade Nzimame. There may be another minister that I've forgotten. Many of us as technocrats, heads of department, we're not that lucky. to have that sort of synergy with the ministers under whom we served. And the point really is to say that the quality of the political and administrative relationship matters. And I think that, Phil is probably a case study of when the political and administrative interface is healthy, what is possible. So these were the ministers, or in that relationship, the minister knew what matters to defer to the DG. In turn, the DG knew what matters to defer to the minister, and there was no conflict of roles. The importance of that, I think, is in the successful building of institutions. In those conditions, it is possible to build strong institutions which are effective and which are sustainable. And I think that's what Phil has left behind. The final aspect I'd like to comment about is the personality. In a first instance, Phil was highly professionally qualified for the role he played as a scientist. He had deep and comprehensive grasp of his field. But above all else, Phil had a unique maturity, and a unique humility. When you dealt with Phil, you were dealing with what he was there to deliver, and not about his ego. So, because we are peers in that same cohort, I really enjoyed a special collegiality with Phil. I consider him a friend, and our friendship has been based on mutual respect. One of the things which I had, as I said here in his comments, is his openness to collaborations, recognizing that, a lot of the things that we have to deliver, the change we want to see, cannot come from us as individuals, and that collaborations are critical. I heard him refer to interministerial committee, for example. And I might say, for example, also that one of the things which we did with Phil was that many of you might remember the CSIR, the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research. That entity used to be an entity of the TTI at some stage, but we were able to hand it over, as a department to Science and Technology, as it was called, at that time. Very seamless, very peaceful, no territorialism around it, because sometimes you do find that this sort of rationalization, institutional rationalization, is contested because people wanna hold on to the territories that they lord over. I think in conclusion, and I say this not having studied, the reports of the Department of Science and Innovation, but I can be sure that this statement is correct that I'm about to make. That Phil has left that department in a better state than he found it in when he arrived. So let me repeat that. Leaving an organization, leaving an institution in a better state than when you found it. That, just that, is the measure of success of a DG. Because, DGs, we do so many things, our responsibilities are huge, span of control, huge. We're running around with so many things. So it's sometimes very difficult to evaluate, our performance and our success. But if you can determine that an institution is in a better shape than when you arrived and you took it over, that is the measure of success. I didn't hear what Phil said about succession planning, because often I think we have a blind spot to this. I know I'm here and I know I'm capable and I know I'm delivering, but hey, you're not going to be there forever. How do you prepare the succession? This is a very important but highly underrated, highly under-attended to aspect of governance and institution building. I work across the road now with the Department of Trade and Industry, which has under it about 17 entities. And every so often, I would be with the minister saying, hey, who are we going to appoint into this entity? Hey, the CEO of this entity is leaving. What are we going to do? And so on. And I said to him, I said, Minister, hey, hold on. These entities have got boards. So one of the fiduciary responsibilities of boards is to ensure that there is a succession plan. And he looked at me. It's not something that it looked like he thought about. So succession planning, you know, I had to do it when I was leaving GTI, being transferred to another department. The minister there said, "But who's gonna take over? Who's gonna take over from you?" And I said to the minister, "Minister, there are about 5 DDGs. Yeah, any one of them can take over." So what Phil has achieved? What is it that will be built upon to take the work to the next level? That is the question, really. You know, how will this work be taken to the next level? He's ran his race, achieved what he's achieved, but how will this be built upon? I think it's a question of succession planning. The jury is out, but I'm sure that you know, his impact on the organization will prevail for some time to come. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
You miss your money, you mustn't say it. No, thank you very much, Dr. Matuna. We really appreciate it. Just a small administrative matter for the people in the room, not the online people. We're going to fly a QR code on the screen. Please just take a picture of that QR code just to register your attendance, so that your scan it with your phone, so that we can everybody can know that you were here, you had not gone AWOL. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Matuna, for your first response. We will engage with both your response and the response from Ms. Poppy Chabalala. So I'm going to invite her, Ms. Poppy Chabalala, who's the Managing Executive of Public Enterprises at Vodacom Business. She's online. Poppy, if you can, we can see you. That's good. Let's see whether we can hear you. You can try and say hello.
Morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We can hear you. The stage is yours. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity. It is humbling for me to get this opportunity to respond to a well-articulated conversation by Dr. Mjahwa. And in his absence, I just want to remind him that when he was a DG in around 2016 to 2018, I was the chairperson of the ICT steering committee under the leadership of Dr. Naledi Pando at the time. And I do take cognizance of well that Mr. Matuna has had a very close relationship and also articulated very well on their roles as the former DGs. And I will say that I'm excited to be in the midst of such legends in the government sector. And the now Commissioner, Mr. Matuna, was my DG when we were working for the Department of Trade and Industry, which is now Trade, Industry and Competition. And I just remember one thing that I would like to share with you. I don't know if he still remembers this. When I met him for the first time, introducing myself as the new CIO for the department, he said to me, Poppy, ICT is not my core mandate. It's an enabler to me. So don't make me focus on ICT and forget or miss delivering on what I am employed to do as a DG. He further said, for an example, when I switch on a laptop, it should switch on and work. When I press send on an email, the email must go out and reach its destination. And when I press print, I should be able to see a paper coming out. And those were the mandates. And I said to myself, wow, what an easy DG, because those are the basics of doing IT. And I do hope that I've done justice, DG, in the time when we were there and I was the CIO of the department. I will take a detour, if you'll allow me, and not focus on Dr. Mjocha as we're responding to his message, but take a detour to unpack mostly the relevance of ICT in ensuring that we meet we are successfully going in the direction of our 2030 vision, and how this can enable us, as I have already said, that the basic ICT role is to enable the organization to do what the organization is supposed to do. I will start by saying, there was a question earlier, I think it was coming from Zuko, and Zuko was asking about the relevance of these innovations to socio-economic challenges and how this can be addressed. Maybe I should just give some thoughts around that, in addition to what the doctor already said, in saying that technology innovation is important in meeting socio-economic challenges in many ways, and part of that is addressing poverty. That is done by providing access to education, to healthcare, to clean water, food security, and even clean energy. It can also go a long way in helping communities and individuals to overcome poverty by creating economic opportunities. It can also lead to high productivity, and that has been proven by a lot of research in this space, which means that you can do more and provide more services with less. And in that way, it directly contributes to economic growth. It can help the country, I'm still talking about technology innovations, to use the scarce resources very effectively and efficiently, and also sustainably, in a way that it can preserve the environment and promote social progress. It can also help individuals to access information and provide or improve their knowledge and skills, regardless of their socio-economic background or position, and as well as regardless of their demographic area. I think in this space, I can just take a detour again to say, the principal of the school, Prof. Ngaweni, I also had interactions with him a lot when I was the vice principal of ICT at UNISA. And at the time he was serving as our deputy chair of the council. And I think with the work that we have done around closing the gap of demographic, taking note of the fact that UNISA students are scattered all over the country, and the work that we did using technology to ensure that we are able to get students to attend lectures online, to do the most was also getting them to do exams online and all other things that they could do. That is where the technology part comes in to liberate and to close the digital gap in the country. It can also help to respond to crisis. And I do think that the doctor did say earlier on around the areas where technology have been proven to help in pandemics, in natural disasters and conflict. He mentioned things about the COVID and those. In other areas, technology can also help to develop more resilient healthcare systems and clean energy technologies. I should quote out that over the last decades, innovation has become a significant way of combating critical social risks as well as threats. If you have spent time with the army, you'll also pick up what technologies is used in defending the country, or in also ensuring that there is enough intelligence to assist in combating risks and threats to the country. Innovation is important in advancement of society as well as solving the kinds of social problems and enhancing social capabilities to act on any issue that they need to act on. It is also responsible for resolving collective problems in a sustainable and efficient way, usually with new technologies like artificial intelligence and those that is very highly possible. And these new technologies and products, they simultaneously meet a social need and lead to improved capabilities and better use of assets and resources. And that is very critical in government, looking at how we struggle to manage assets and also to make sure that the resources we have are optimally used for the purpose of serving the country. In order to be able to solve these kind of challenges, it's important for me to highlight that it's not just a government problem, but it is a societal problem, and hence we need to have the private sector, the public sector, and even non-profit organization tight on the hip in as far as solving for these kind of problems. Let's take a closer look at the importance of these innovations for organizations and also as well for business. Generally, it's difficult to even identify a single organization that will be able to survive without innovation, or where innovation is not important. Although some of the industries depend on innovation more than others, but innovation as itself is one aspect of life that is not discriminatory. So it doesn't discriminate. It considers everybody, irrespective of how much you need it or you don't. Even highly regulated industries, such as the taxi industry, I know that the doctor spoke about it, hence I'm using that example at the moment. And also the banks, they will normally say, no, we are so regulated, we're not gonna be taking these innovations and that kind of innovation so lightly. But look at what Uber has done to destabilize that industry, the taxi industry. No one would have thought that we would be having services like those from a taxi. And also look at how the innovation has affected the way that we do banking. Some of us don't even know that the bank branches anymore because everything is done online. So innovation can deliver significant benefits, and it's one of the critical skills that we need for success in any business, or especially in our organization as government. Economic growth is driven by innovation and technology, and all those improvements add up to making our economy to grow, which reduces the cost of production as well as enabling high output. If we look at this from the perspective of government, different automation solutions will decrease manual, repetitive work and release a lot of time for more important value-creating tasks. Recent reports have indicated that government could free about 30% of their civil servant time by automating the mundane tasks like admin, manual document management, just to mention a few. Government organizations that are implementing technologies like artificial intelligence are already seeing a range of benefits. In many cases, they are outpacing even the private sector. we are hearing more and more of the government senior leaders or decision makers saying that adoption of technology has actually improved employee experience and satisfaction, and even created more operational costs and saving time. It's important for me to highlight that and to bring forth that there are considerations to be taken when you want to actually take this journey or embark on this journey of innovation using technology. An important one is the quality of data. And I think this hits home in as far as government is concerned, because we deal with a lot of data. The entire value chain of technologies like artificial intelligence is built on having high quality and relevant data, to a point that results will be worthless or even dangerous or harmful if the data sets that are being used are of poor quality. Innovation also has a positive impact on company culture in a way that it increases the ability to acquire, to create, and also to make best use of the competencies, the skills, and knowledge that you have. Mr. Matuna spoke earlier about the issue of somebody taking over from you. Now, forgetting the term properly exactly already. And if you are able to use the skills of technology to know the capacities, the competencies, and the knowledge that you have in the resources as human beings, you'll be able to know when the next wave of the organization is put on the table, who are the capable people that needs to take over. It doesn't become an emotional decision. Innovation practices can help build a culture of continuous learning. And I think this hits home with the National School of Governance, and also under the leadership of the current principal, that this continuous learning that is his passion more than anything else. It contributes to growth and personal development, not only because you are doing it for government, but because you as an individual need to learn, you need to grow, and you need to be developed. This kind of innovation environments not only just makes you a knowledgeable person, but it again motivates people to constantly improve the way that they do work, and also the way that they work with other people and how they do collaboration. If you look at the history of innovation, it has not at any point in time come from giving people incentives. And we like always tying things to incentives. But this type of technology comes in with a satisfaction of creating an environment where the ideas can connect, collaborate, and grow each other. And I want to emphasize that when the entire organization is supportive and providing the right tools for trade to employees, there will be a lot of success in their job. It eventually even have a positive effect on how people perceive their jobs, which talks a lot to motivation, skills transfer, people staying longer in the jobs that they are in and growing and having the meaningful impact. The results of this can help improve access to education, healthcare, clean water, as we are giving service to the communities, and also it also can have an aid to the fight against climate change, poverty, as well as hunger. However, it is crucial to ensure that innovation technologies, in as much as they're being portrayed as useful and relevant to every organization and country, it's important to make sure that they are developed and used in an ethical and responsible manner, because failure to do this might result in unintended negative consequences, which will lead everybody else then to boycott or even reflect differently on the use of technology. A question that we can ask as I'm getting to the end of my response is that, can we rely on technology of the cutting edge technology adoption to assist our country in meeting our 2030 vision? And without a doubt, the answer is yes. But I want to pick just about 2 goals of the 2030 vision that are relevant to education specifically. The first one being that of building a strong and coherent set of institutions for delivering quality education science and technology innovation, training and skills and development. And the second one being that of developing world-class centers and programs in the national system of innovation and the higher education sector. So it's important that I highlight that South Africa is a rising powerhouse for research, in tying it to the vision of 2030 around education. It is a powerhouse for innovation and use of emerging technologies, digital technologies. And here I'm talking about artificial intelligence, blockchains, geographic information system like GIS, Internet of Things, as well as any other new generation that is now used a lot in data analysis. But a most relevant question to ask is, has technology made our society better? And again, undoubtedly, the answer is yes. Think of it from communication and transportation to healthcare and connectivity. Technology has enhanced our lives for the better. And there are many examples in a country for that. The best part of it is that it is ever evolving. It's not stagnant. In that way, it facilitates more advanced features that are aimed at improving quality of life. There are key things that we need to focus on as a country that will enable us to succeed towards the 2030 vision using technology innovation. One of them is digital infrastructure, such as e-services. This is a strategy on innovations that outlines the development of various online government services, such as tax filing, identity administration, health services, social benefits, and many others that are relevant to public service. The other one is interoperability and integration. There was a question to the doctor earlier that was saying, how do we ensure that the good work and the good examples that of the things that was done well in the Department of Science and Technology, how do we get it to roll out in the rest of the government? How can they take the lessons from such and implement them in different areas? And from a technology point of view, the biggest challenge is interoperability and integration. Because if this is in place, we can be assured that various government departments and agencies can effectively communicate and share data through integrated digital platforms. As a result, if you go to Home Affairs, the fact that you've got an ID, you can be picked up at any point of service in government. There is a question I constantly ask myself to say, why is it that if I am an orphan, I'm already in the social grant from primary all the way to high school, and now I need to go to tertiary, I need to apply for NSFAS? Because in a properly integrated system, that should not be the case. My record is clear to everybody. As they do planning, they use the records to ensure that they know the kind of students that are going into university that will not have financial support. The third one is cybersecurity and data privacy. I spoke about data earlier, but this now emphasizes the need for a robust security measures to safeguard the sensitive government and citizen data, because plugging all data into the cloud all the time without proper security could be a disaster to the whole country, which is also the reason why South Africa was lagging in as far as adoption of cloud, because they just didn't understand why we put our data out there for the world and what the world will do with our data that will compromise us as an organization. And the last one is the digital skills and capacity building, which is very relevant to the school as well, because it supports the successful implementation of projects like e-government, focusing on digital skills training for government staff and public awareness initiatives that also educate and encourage our residents is in our citizen to adopt and use our e-services, because it also doesn't help that you put them out there and no one is using them because the community is not very much alert and made aware of such technologies. In my conclusion, I just want to say that the main purpose of innovation is known to improve people's skills So when it comes to managing our government business, innovation is the key for making such kind of progress. Although any innovation activity is not necessarily gonna or doesn't have the power to actually save the world as one innovation, but any form of innovation that we are focusing on should make sure that it's showing an improvement in the area that we've got an effect or we have a control over. We should also remember that technologies like artificial intelligence has the massive potential to streamline public services while creating new opportunities and solving socio-economic challenges. But it's important that, as with all technology systems, it must be built securely, it must be built fairly, it must also be based on high quality data, and not forgetting why we're doing it. And as a result, it must have the citizen experience in mind at all times. I thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So what we are going to do, you mustn't go away. Poppy, you mustn't go away. Mtate Matona is also here physically with us. So we are going to engage.
Apologies, I'm not hearing the audio from your side.
You are not hearing us.
Now I am. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that. So it means all the online colleagues were not hearing us. So let me mute this one. So I was saying you mustn't leave us. We would like you to stay on. Ntate Tsidiso Matona is also here physically with us. What we are going to do is to have a conversation inviting all the participants, both online and physically here, to engage on the issues that Dr. Mjwaha raised, Ntate Tsidiso Matona raised, and also yourself, you've just touched on. Already online, there are a number of comments and questions that have been shared with all of us. I'm going to start with those that are online. The first one is from Voyo Kubai, and he says, how can state employees play a role in introducing innovative technology? In the municipal space, funding is a major issue for innovators. We have the plans, but our institutions don't have the funding to innovate. That is Voyo. And then Nobatembu Zotehas is indicating that what are plans for government regarding partnerships with private sector on utilizing technology, specifically around water desalination, sanitation, and energy, especially through the creation of enabling regulations and policies. Also, how does government plan to mitigate the social digital divide between urban, peri-urban, and rural areas? The last one that is online is from William Mpurwana. And William says, thank you very much for the inspiring presentation and engagements. One wishes that there are municipality officials attending this session as well. Well, our first comment was from a colleague who is coming from that kind of municipal experience. So it looks like we are covered there. And Mpurwana is saying, this is because according to my observation, it does not appear that there is a concerted effort at the municipality levels to take advantage of the use of technology effectively. Yeah, I agree with William on that one. In the room, questions, statements, and then we're going to allow our respondents to come in. So, okay, so you'll be the first one, and then you'll be the second one, and then you'll be the third one, and then we'll come to that side. Let's take those first three.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Maja. My question actually is, what was said by Dr. Phil. He said that youth should not be scared of taking science in school. Yet, currently, we have hundreds of youth who are sitting at home with university degrees, both in science and technology. So how do we balance the output of the university graduates to the demand in the market to ensure that, we don't end up going outside to other countries, bringing in people to work in the spaces where we have youth that are qualified but are not able, to find the job in the market? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You were number 2.
Thank you very much, facilitator. The question that I have was not necessarily raised in the discussion, but I just thought I should sneak it in. It's about, so there's a contemporary discussion around Starlink. Starlink is owned by Elon Musk, and I think the last time the conversation was that the Minister of Communications would want to issue a policy directive to ICASA to consider us sidestepping our BBBEE policy to accommodate Starlink to operate in South Africa. And I'm raising this question because I see that Mr. Tsidiso is a commissioner. So I just wanted to throw it in, but it's linked to innovation. Because the whole conversation is around broadband and ensuring that we've got better connectivity in South Africa, and that's why the conversation is there around Starlink. But my question is more around how do we de-risk South Africa from going into the future, from having to fall into the trap of sidestepping progressive policy to enable international corporations to operate in South Africa. And I'm raising this question because innovation is like change. It's constant. Tomorrow there's going to be a different institution that is leading in terms of innovation that we might need in South Africa. And would we then want to do the same process again, that every time there is a new innovation or there's an emerging technology, we then, sidestep policy to try and enable those players to come and engage in the South African economy? My other question would be to Ms. Poppy. She spoke about the fact that, as much as innovation is disruptive, it's also quite progressive. But one wonders if the South African government has effectively deployed innovation and technology to try and resolve some of the socioeconomic conditions and challenges that we have in South Africa. I mean, you look at our inability to deliver services, and you listen to what Dr. Phil would have said earlier about around some of the innovations that are there that can be deployed in government to try and ensure that we rapidly resolve some of the challenges that we have. So I just wanted her perspective around that have we as government effectively deployed innovation and technology to try and resolve some of the impending challenges that we have? And if we have not, what mechanisms can we be able to put in place to ensure that there is some impetus towards employing some of those innovations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. I think.
Thank you, Program Director. First of all, I would like to commend Dr. Mjaha on his success story, and I appreciate how he outlined innovation as the key for professionalism in the public sector. And also to commend the two respondents on their insightful presentation. But then my question is directed to Mr. Matona on succession planning. My question is, how do you implement succession planning without raising any expectations? And how do you determine your successor? And then also, how do you ensure that the person is fully prepared? And the third question is, I want to understand, how do you come up with the transfer of skills, the program? Is it a formal arrangement or what? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's take this side. I saw a hand, so you'll be the first. And then any other hands this side? You'll be the second. Thank you. Go ahead. Is it on? I think the mic might not be. There we go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to the program director, Dr. Maja. I have firstly is a comment which is based on the responses of Mr. Matuna. This is based on one of the aspects that he was talking about. Actually, it's a reflection on the personality of Dr. Mchwaha. Mr. Matuna highlighted the first thing being that Mr. Mchwaha was highly professionally qualified, actually. And the second element was he had a unique level of maturity. The third aspect that I noted was when he was talking about the fact that it was not about Mr. Mchwaha's ego. So my comment in those three aspects is I just so wish, as the public servants who are here, we can learn some lessons from Mr. Mchwaha, because I believe these are some of the elements that contributed to the successes that we heard about this morning. So my question now is based on this last element, which is about the ego. Because to me, the reason why Mr. Mchwaha achieved or accomplished the aspects that he highlighted this morning, it was because he was not overpowered by his ego. Because to me, someone who's overpowered by the ego doesn't value that other people's perspectives. And in that case, when you don't value those perspectives, then somehow it will block the innovative strategies to be developed and be implemented in the workplace. So my question is, how do we deal with an instance where the leaders who are supposed to ensure that innovation is being prioritized, how do we deal with a case with those whose egos take control over their maturity and humility, which was just heard? And by asking this question, I'm not implying that in this institution we have such leaders. I know for sure we have very matured and skilled leaders who are leading us so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Program Director. My question is around capacity building in the public service. We often hear about lack of digital skills in the public service. And we often hear about, there's a word that is often thrown away around reskilling of public servants. My view is that we just mentioning those words, but there seems not to be any practical, steps towards ensuring that we reskill public servants. For instance, we, you know, in an organization, I think we need to look at the skills that, you know, the qualification that people have, and look at how we can actually work with our partners to equip those people with the relevant digital skills. My main question is, how can we as the public service take advantage of the international partnerships that we have with countries like China and India to develop the skills of the public servants? Thanks.
No, thank you very much. So before I hand back to Mr. Tsidiso Matona and Dr. Poppy Chabalal, I'm going to add a few more questions for you from online, because there are new questions online. So I'm going to add them for you. Stella is back. That is Stella Vuma. She's saying, great presentations, Sis Poppy. What is your, she says intake, but I think she wanted to say take. What is your take on IT support and current insufficient support or expertise from IT teams within public sector, which can lead to poorly implemented technology solutions? Secondly, on political leadership, which plays a critical role on speeding up digital transformation, political influence in this country, we continuously experience changes in political leadership, and priorities may disrupt ongoing digital transformation initiatives. So what is your take? So that is to Dr. Chabalala. And then Julianne Rumbelo is asking Dr. Poppy for your input regarding your point that government should properly understand what skills and personal capabilities exist internally, where this could match strategic and coal-face service delivery needs. And then he's adding that the reality in government is that senior officials are often very comfortable in comfortable silos and with the status quo. They don't want to be disrupted by new knowledge and capability. How can this be changed to enable a more capable and effective state? And then we have the last two. One is from Kaiser Moroka: to ensure triple helix government partnership. I've never seen those words before, but I'll read them. Triple helix government partnership to empower local governance. There's a DDM model initiated from the presidency. How do DSTI and relevant entities support this noble initiative to improve service delivery? That's from Kaiser. The last one, Zuko is back. Second last one. I'll only do two more now and nothing more. So Zuko Makaula says, thank you for insightful presentations. We've noted that in the public service, there are a number of innovative solutions that have been implemented over time. There are a number of examples provided by Dr. Mjwaha, Dr. Poppy, and other examples, but we have noted that these are not institutionalized in the public service. How can the South African government institutionalize the ecosystem of innovation? I think that's a good question. I like that one. And then the last one is from Mbusi Swangobo. The current procurement system of government needs improvement to support reverse engineering innovation initiatives. Yeah, those are big words. Reverse engineering innovation initiatives to increase industrial capacity. Any suggestions from the panelists? So, okay. So should we start with you, Dr. Matona? I think let's start with you. And then you can respond to all of this, and then you can add some more inputs. I might engage you on one or two of your responses, and then we go to Dr. Chabalala.
Thank you. So I will try to group some of the questions because the themes are the same. So there's a theme around innovation or public service innovations by public servants. And the point has been raised about budget constraints. So I do believe that we need to deepen the incentive system in public service for innovation. I think it is there. I think there was some ideas, some initiatives around that. You will all know about something called public service improvement plans. So when you evaluate your performance in a particular year, in terms of the gaps from your performance, what is it that you're going to do differently? What new ideas, are there for the next round? But that culture is not strong enough in my view. The truth is that all of us, there's a point where you know that what I'm doing can be better. I can do better. All right, I can do better. But the incentive for you to initiate that improvement is not weak, because we don't ask you, what new ideas have you got to solve the problems in your area of responsibility? So it's a very important point that has been raised, and I think it deserves further deliberations as such, to look at the incentive systems across the state. I'm also very deeply concerned about the impacts of budget cuts within the state. I think if we're not careful, whilst we are talking about enhancing the capacity of the state on the one hand, on the other hand, the impacts of these budget cuts are actually going to weaken the capacity of the state. There has to be a point where we evaluate what is the impact? What impacts are these constraints having on the capacity of the state and on service delivery? I don't hear that discussion is being had. Maybe it's being had in foresight. I don't know, but it's a very, very important, because we will wake up one day, whilst we may have saved money in terms of the fiscus, but we will be left with a state that has become weak. So I think it's something that deserves further discussion. There was a question around, let me deal with, I'll come to BEE perhaps as a last point, but let me deal with the succession planning. So, and I want to compare the public sector with the private sector. In the private sector, they have institutionalized succession planning. So, of course, you can't anoint somebody and say, you will be the next CEO of the company. But the environment in the organization is such that the one who is going to potentially be the new CEO emerges because this is an individual possibly who is excelling, whose performance scorecard comes up tops all the time. And as a CEO, the incumbent CEO, I target you, I look at you. And at a certain point, it's the best. You can't keep a good man down or a good woman down in an organization. So everybody will concede. I sometimes talk to executives in private sector, and then say, so and so, I think so and so is going to be the next CEO, not because that person has been tipped, but that because they are proving themselves to be a potential successor. And when that has been achieved, the person is then taken to training. You know, they take them to schools, business schools all over the world, and that type of thing. They do that in the private sector. It's a culture. It's accepted. We don't have something like that in the public service. Of course, you know, I look at my DDGs. Now, you know, anyone of them can be the next DG, because when you've reached that level of seniority, DGs are picked up from DDGs. But there will be probably one who, in my view, best fits the mark. And in fact, just across the road, my response to the minister who asked me this question, who's going to be the successor? I said, any of the DDGs, but so-and-so, I think, in my view, best fits the role. So it's a subtle thing, because if you don't do it properly, it can create conflict. If somebody is seen as being the anointed one, it can be problematic. But we've got to be deliberate in building a culture and an awareness about the importance of succession planning, and how this might. I mean, each organization has to develop its own approach to this, and there's knowledge out there, you know, around how best to do this, best practice in succession planning. The debate around Starlink, I think when we look at it, we need to distinguish between the politics of it and the legalities of it. The legalities of it are that it is law. BEE is a law of general application in government. All government departments, including that Department of Digital Communications that is dealing with this matter, is bound by the law. In fact, even going beyond that, they have a sector code, they have a sector charter which sets requirements. So there are two very interesting cases in the public domain. The other one is this Splice Affair, you know, which is also kind of fallen foul. That issue has fallen foul of the rules, as it were. So I think it remains to be seen what the outcome will be. But I think, for example, if I just take the Department of Transport and the Air Traffic Licensing Council, they are doing the right thing. The legislation says that when you issue license, and it's in the Act, by the way, BE Act, when you issue license or you procure or you provide an incentives, you must take account BEE. They're doing precisely that, and I hope that they're supported to be, you know, to hold firm. The Starlink thing, I think, you know, to the extent that is a political thing, it's going to be resolved politically. I think within the GNU, but it would be flouting the law if they escape, they successfully sidestep the legislation. Now here is a point. Typically, you know, we get told that no, BE is getting foreign investors. I don't believe that, you know, because I go around talking to embassies and so on. The embassies just want to know, you know, how best can we comply and so on. Because the best foreign investors know that when you come into a country, you must comply with the laws of the country. When you go to China to do business in China, you will comply with the laws. When you go to America, everywhere, So why must when it comes to South Africa, we allow investors to choose and pick and say, no, you know, I'm okay with this legislation. I don't like that legislation. There is no such a thing. In fact, you know, on the contrary, we remain a very compelling investment proposition in the global context. I have never seen any evidence, and the GNU, by the way, says we'll do evidence-based policy, where an investor says, no, I was going to invest, but I didn't invest because of PE. These are all scare stories, and we should just read between the lines, and particularly this sector. You know, we struggle with transformation, to effect transformation in existing industries. My wish is that when it comes to new industries, from the start go, we must integrate BE. Because if we don't, we will forever remain spectators. Black people will forever remain spectators in the economy of our land. So renewable industries, digital technologies, and so on. We must, in fact, tomorrow I'm supposed to be in an event with a competition commission because they have done a research on these online intimidation platforms, Take a Lot, Shade, and those sorts of things. Because there's no Black people in those industries. You know, tech-based industries, you know, you don't find Black people. And not because there are no Black people who are innovating, you know, solutions, technological solutions. The problem is that they don't have support. They don't have, you know, these things, by the way, you know, you have venture capitals or angel funders who will take a bet, you know, in your solution and fund you until you bring the thing to the market, as it were. So access to funding, and especially funding for startups and innovations, is a big problem. And it's a pity. It's relevant to science and technology and what Phil said about what they're doing in that regard. Have I dealt with my questions? I think I have. Or the ego issue. The ego issue. You know, these issues around ego are called soft issues in any organizations. You know, what is the right way of carrying yourself as a leader in public service? Well, in the first instance, you can't have an ego because you know, DGs and leaders are supposed to lift others. The success, the measure of your success as a leader is the extent to which you have built others. Because you're a leader, they already affirmed. You know, when you are there, you're already affirmed. So you don't need any further. You don't need an ego, you know, where you go looking out for affirmation. Rather, you use your position to affirm others and to build others. But we don't talk about this enough, I believe, these soft issues. Most of our work, when you come to planning and reflections, it's about hard issues. The hard issues about strategies, policies, plans, and so on. As if these things are going to implement themselves. So we don't say, okay, here is our plan. What are the requirements for success? Budgets, yes. Technology, yes. But the soft issues. So the space, and I'm hoping the school can encourage a space to be opened where we can talk about these things, where leaders can place themselves in front of their people and get feedback. And, you know, be open to being criticized. We're not perfect. When you say you're a leader, it doesn't mean you're perfect. But are you comfortable in your skin to place yourself in front of your people? Give them feedback and receive feedback from them. So very important issue, by the way. And that'll be the last point I think I'd like to comment on. But the rest will be for Bobby.
Okay,
Thank
so don't give away the mic. I want to throw something at you, and then once you've responded, we go to Dr. Chabalala, because I'm throwing it at you and her at the same time. Now, this masterclass, we are trying to use Dr. Mjwaha, Dr. Phil Mjwaha, and his stint in the science and innovation space as a case study. Not only as a case study in leadership, but more importantly, as a case study on the issue of the national system of science and innovation. But the reason we're talking about innovation and science is because we want to link it to issues of socioeconomic development, country growth, people growth. Now, here's the thing that I want to throw both at you and also at Dr. Chabalala. What are the key triggers that make societies innovative? What are the key triggers that make societies innovative? The reason I'm asking this is because I am of the view that in South Africa, we think you can become innovative by starting at the top. So every time we talk about innovation, we want to innovate what is called 4IR. And I always say, and I'm not a natural scientist, I don't know whether you can start with 4IR when you've never done 1IR. You know, in South Africa, for example, many of us were shocked when we saw in the last 20 years that a human being can just get a gas and park at a corner street and weld car exhausts. We had never seen anything like that before being done by a person at a corner in the street. We always thought you must book at Land Rover, and then they must give you an appointment book, and then you must take that car there and you pay 10,000. Suddenly there were these people who were welding cars in street corners. Now that's not innovation, but that's basic one-eye technology. We think that technology can start at the top. We can start by just cruising. But also, you know, we think that we must wait for the state, of course, right? So even this conversation today, the reason I'm raising this is the thread that I've been picking up today is really around this thing of youth demographic dividend that Dr. Mjwaha was talking about. There was a question from Ms. Williams about young people. There was a question here about from Dr. Malachi around young people who are already qualified in maths and science, but are sitting at home, right? So there is this big question around the youth demographic dividend, but I'm not sure whether we are positioning it properly where we should begin at 1IR instead of trying to start it at 4IR, but also our dependency on the state to trigger these things. What are the key triggers for a society to be innovative? So you respond, and then we go to Dr. Chabalala.
It's a very important but equally complex question, and I'm going to come at it from a macro point of view, because it's addressed in the National Development Plan, and it's about R&D, research and development, where successful innovating economies are those that invest deliberately and significantly in R&D. South Africa, we have that history, but unfortunately, we're not investing enough in R&D. So the target, I think, was about, I don't remember, I used to know the number off the top of my head. I think 1%, between 1% and 3% of GDP is a target. If you're spending that, and it's a kind of a norm, a global norm, then you are thereby investing in your innovative capacity as an economy and as a society. So we still work in progress, clearly, but there's something to be built upon. We have a very good ecosystem. We just need to nurture it, but most importantly, put our money where our mouth is in that regard. I don't know. And, you know, talking about budget cuts, this is one area, in fact, where, you know, you would think that we don't have this sort of horizontal haircut of everybody, but certain areas are too important, including this one, that you allow investment to go into. And it's not just government investment, by the way, it's private sector investment. In fact, private sector, I think, are probably doing better investing in R&D. So absolutely very, very important. The next question is around skills. You know, 2 weeks ago, we are being asked, you know, new political bosses, looking at skills. And then, you know, in this notion of a skills revolution, we keep hearing it is skills revolution. And we do need a skills revolution, absolutely, because it's also linked to, you know, the question around R&D. But our system doesn't function well, because we tend to think about skills as an end in itself. All right, whereas a skill is ability to achieve something. All right, and therefore it's useless if it's not applied. And that in fact, skills and job creation are one thing, because a skill is not academic. It's not what you learn in a formal setting. A skill is something that you learn in practice. So part of addressing the skills deficit in the country is actually to be placing young people in jobs. That's where they learn the skills. And in fact, actually, if you look at the history, the industrial history of South Africa, that's basically what used to happen. You know, the state-owned enterprises, they were there for that purpose. Give people an opportunity to acquire skills. So you can't talk about skills away from job creation, and that's what we've done. I think we must break that disjuncture, because and this is the point, you know, about DTI, to say DTI, your job creation mandate means that when you fund businesses, it must also be a requirement that they take people and skill them. That's how you create jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Chabalala, let's then revert back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I can see that as my former leader, he left the difficult ones for me, but it's okay, delegation. I'll take the first one, and if I miss something, you'll help me, Doctor. There was a question around the effectiveness or deployment of technologies, especially in the municipalities side of things, the slowness and all those kind of things in terms of that resolving and improving the service challenges, and what should be done to improve this kind of this adoption. I must say, from the experience I've had being in government for a long time, and also almost equal time in the private sector, and in the role that I'm in now of selling solutions and products to government, I can say that even though there is a slow pace but there is adoption in some of the municipalities, especially in the cities than anything else. I know that there are projects that are related to water and sanitation, energy management, utility management solutions that are deployed across some of the municipalities. And I'll talk about the Buffalo City municipality in Eastern Cape that comes into my head right now, that has been running such and has shown a lot of improvement in collecting from the services that they render, as well as being able to account for the services that they bring to the people that they serve. But there are initiatives as well from National Treasury. I know that there are some transversals that National Treasury have put in place. The one that I know of currently now is on smart metering across all municipalities. And there is funding that National Treasury gives to those municipalities that are struggling with funding, but they need to be in good standing in terms of their audit reports and those kind of things. There are categories and qualifications that you need to go through to be able to get those. But and also we have other institutions like Centec is also very big on the IoT space, making sure that, and it's focusing specifically on municipalities. So the challenge with municipalities is, I think, some of the other things Mr. Matuna has already alluded to around the budget cuts and those kind of things, but it's mostly around their fund management. And where there is been improvement in fund management, then the institutions like National Treasury have come in to assist, and I have witnessed a lot of projects where they have come in and funded initiatives. In actual fact, there is through SALGA, municipalities can submit the initiatives that they need funding on, and then those initiatives are taken through the right forums that are headed by National Treasury. So I will couple that with the lack of digital skills in government. I think there was somebody on the floor that said there's this talk around lack of skills and upskilling, reskilling, but we don't have practical steps as to how to do that. Also from the experience I've had as a former CIO, it's very hard to attract and keep highly skilled technical resources in government. And it's not necessarily because of the salaries and all, but it's also the exposure to growth and technology, because in the areas where I've been in IT, many a times I felt like, oh my God, I should have stayed in the private sector because now technology is moving very fast and I'm lagging behind. When I interact with other CIOs in the other industries, I feel like I'm now rusting in a way. So many people leave the public sector because they want that exposure in terms of dealing with the core technologies, because technology is like an addiction. Once you get to grasp technology, you just want to run with it and you don't want to be left behind. And in terms of responding to your question then, is what I have seen working is that there should be partnership with technological companies that are relevant to the initiatives that the department is going with. When I was working at UNISA, we had what we call the open distance e-learning program, where we needed to see how we can move their organization as in the university to a level where students can interact fully online without with minimum manual intervention. And we identified key areas that are important for that to be a success. And based on that, we said, who are the partners out in the industry that we can partner with? And we engaged them. We had trips to the Open University of China, spend a week there just to understand how they've done what they are doing. We also went to other industries, Microsoft, we went to Oracle, we went to Cisco, Huawei, and most of those technologies that we wanted to see what kind of technologies are out there that could support these 5 initiatives that we wanted to have, because we are not all over in as far as that is concerned. The outcome of that is we're getting overwhelming welcome from the private sector to say, we definitely want to work with you. How do we work with you? They even put on the table some funding that they can put for the university to help us going forward. But the biggest challenge that is there is the supply chain. And I think one of the audience also asked about the challenges of supply chain, because our supply chain processes have not evolved with the needs and the support that government requires. And if we can start doing that, there is a lot that government can unlock in partnership with the private sector, because the private sector is ready to do so in all areas, by the way. But they know that once you get to be in partnership with government, then you cannot respond to the tenders because there's a conflict of interest. And or if you put money to supporting, because like I can have an example, one of the service providers say that we prepared to build an e-library for the science and technology college, for them to do all their experiments online and all these assessments and all these things that were relevant. But now when they do that, then there is an infrastructure tender that comes through and they cannot respond because they already feel there's already the rules around supply chain that you are compromised in as far as your what is it, competitive advantage in as far as this is concerned. So most of the private sector space, they start now pulling back in terms of what they can do. And by the way, they do have social, what is it? It's obligations, social obligations that they need to have in support of government and to support initiatives. But it becomes a bit hard if you're still going to do business with the same organization. So my push on that is, if you already have some level of relationship and partnership with the private sector, make sure that part of what you benefit as a public sector in that is the skills of your people, because at least that is not already affected by supply chain. So I have used that a lot in my private space, where I've taken my team to be certified on Microsoft as Microsoft engineers, Cisco, Huawei, and the others for their own growth. But that is part of what they can do as an implementation, as part of what skills transfer. So all those things can help you to maneuver around and still be safe in as far as supply chain is concerned. Another area of practical steps is to forming partnership with other countries that have done similar, or other countries that have got almost similar objectives as your country or as your department across the world, especially in the east side of the world. There's a lot of similar challenges in as far as ruralness, in terms of scarcity of technology and other things that you can collaborate with. That I have found as well, it assists, because if you are in the space and you are talking to the people that you work with, they don't believe you. They always feel like, what agenda she's on now. But if you have somebody else, almost of the similar knowledge and level in terms of the skills, if it's not coming from you, it's coming from somebody else, there seems to be a better understanding or belief in that the person can do this because they have experienced it in somewhere else. And you go and do the same in the other area as well. I've noticed that's why we find ourselves speaking in other areas outside of our own space of work, because there is a better understanding of what you say, which some of the people that they're working with have said already, but they would not buy into it easily if it's said by the people they already judged as in the terms of the relevance of competency. But I wanted to emphasize that forming strategic partnerships and with other countries also assist, because then you don't start from scratch, and you can also send your own people in the same space, and they can get knowledge, and they can transfer skills, they can do all other things, and you can even collaborate in terms of the projects that you are doing, because then in that case it's not going through a supply chain process. There was a question from Novatembu, the collaboration, I think I've answered that, collaboration with private sector to improve utilization of technology in the spaces of water, sanitation, and energy. I think that I've already spoken to, but I just want to add on to saying that we need to go back and take advantage of what we used to have in my earlier times of being a CIO, the proof of concept, because there's a lot you can get out of the service providers if they put a proof of concept, because sometimes people don't believe something until they can see it. And that's a challenge of technology, because most of the things are abstract and sometimes software, not tangible. But if you have a POC, you can say, let's take this part of the department. We're not going to pay anything out of it, but let's get a company that can showcase the capabilities of what it looks like to be at the stage where we want to be. And based on that, you can have pockets of excellence that you can use. And it goes back then to the challenge of that. If you have that POC, it becomes difficult for you to participate on the rollout at that particular time. So Julian spoke about comfort in comfortable silos. I like how you put it, because it does become like a comfort, because people don't want to change. And I don't think everybody always say that change is as good as a holiday, but no one wants to take that holiday, because we all just don't like changes. And change is what makes you to move to the next level. So when I was working at government, there was this discussion around what is it? It was a strategy. It's called GUI, Government Information Architecture, or something like that. But it was meant to make sure that all departments are guided and they implement according to a specific government architecture. That architecture was very good. And I must say that I have used it in many areas where I have been a CIO, and it's very easy to implement. But the challenge is coming from adoption of such and the knowledge that this is a good architecture for government. And if all departments can use the GUI architecture, it states everything that needs to be done when you walk into a department, in as far as making sure that you are putting the technologies that are relevant for the department, you are ensuring that the technologies are aligned and talking to other departments that are relevant to you. When I was working at the DTI, we knew that we needed a lot of collaboration with Home Affairs, with SARS, and with other departments, because our business was around making sure that the people that we are registering as doing business in the country are on good standing, and the individuals behind them are also on good standing in as far as other things related to fraud and previous maladministration that are against a particular individual. And for that purpose, the use of the government architecture assisted us to be able to tap into those as part of our verification process. I remember we used to spend long hours and with SARS on how we can be able to make sure that as people are filing on the annual returns at CIPC, we ensure that they have a good standing with SARS, because people might not be able to do business with the organization as in South Africa if they're not in good standing with those kind of regulations. So it's important that the government departments use the government enterprise architecture, which is available for everybody. And it helps you, if you're in the IT space, it helps you to articulate the business case. It helps you to articulate how relevant this is going to be to the department, so that people don't just see you buying technology and not knowing what that technology is going to do. And there is another question from Stella, the insufficiency of expertise that results in poor implementation of solutions. My experience in implementing large to small projects in ICT is that if the business case is not sound, you won't get proper funding. And if the funding is approved without knowledge of what success looks like in that project, the project will never end, or the project will run out of budget, or the project is not going to serve the purpose that it's supposed to do. I mean, there are many things that change when you're doing a project in IT. Hence, you need to do your projects timelessly, because sometimes you run with projects for too long that they are overtaken by events, and people start wondering what this project is for and what relevance it's got, because things have moved. So it's important that your projects are within the timelines and you are very clear. And for your own help, it should be clear that when I do this project, this is the benefit to the organization, and how is that benefit going to be measured? Because if it's not measurable, anything can go and everybody can end up with that. But if you talk about the support in terms of the skills in executing projects, you need to make sure that there's collaboration. I have not gone into a big project without the support of private sector. Not necessarily through a procurement process, but bounce your ideas, bounce your plan, bounce your strategy, bounce your business case with the private sector people, because they can give you accurate information in as far as how you can be able to execute this. Sometimes you don't understand the type of skills we'll need at a particular time of the project and for how long you're going to need those skills. But if you've got your plan aligned to what you want to achieve, then you'll be successful. So I can't say that it's because of the insufficient support. There's a lot of support out there, but we normally don't reach out to the support. Maybe from the fear of association or other things. But in my experience as a CIO, I've never been a CIO that is scared of interacting with the private sector, because that's the successes I've done in the areas where I've been a CIO come from the collaboration with the private sector, where you don't have resources internally to do the work, but you tap onto resources free of charge out there that can be able to guide you and put you in the right place in as far as implementation is concerned. The consistent change in political leadership as a disruption also come in. There's a question that Mr. Matuna, I like his response where he said this is a political matter and it should be answered and resolved politically. I think the change in political leadership is something we don't have control over, and it's not something that we should put in our plans as part of our success, because then if it does go hayway, then we are finding ourselves in a dilemma. What I've always advised our other CIOs, which I do a lot, especially now in this time and age of my life, is you need to make sure that whatever you do in terms of your strategy is talking to the department, irrespective of who is leading the department. Because at the end of the day, the priorities of the organizations can change, but the mandate of the organization as a department cannot change. It can be revised here and there, but at the end of the day, if you are working in a department for health, it will always be about providing health services to the society, irrespective of what at that particular time is being a priority. And the beauty about technology is that it is agile. So in any form, irrespective of what it's serving for, you still use the same technology to solve for any problem. It is just what do we call it? We call it the user view of it, to say now, if you look at it, it's talking to health. If you look at it, it's talking to transport. If you look at it, it's talking to trade and industry. But at the end of the day, the background is the same. It's just the applications that changes. So as in adoption of innovative technology, you shouldn't be thinking about technologies that solve the problem that has just surfaced. It should be a sustainable solution that can withstand any change in the organization. There was something from Zugo about institutionalizing the ecosystem and innovation. I think that this boils down to policy, the relevance of policy, the relevance of architecture in the organization. And I know that if I talk architecture, we all jump into ICT architecture. Architecture is just not about IT. IT is the enabler of an architecture. But at the end of the day, it needs to be clear what strategies you are putting in, for what purpose, and how is that going to serve the organization. And if we can all follow that kind of a process, we can find that the ecosystem of innovation is by naturalization, institutionalized, and we can see things going forward. The last question that I wanted to respond to is the most difficult one that was asked by the doctor, the key triggers that make society innovative. I'll talk just from top of my head, Doc, and maybe some examples here and there, but the one trigger that makes people to think about innovation, and you're correct to say innovation doesn't start from high up, that you need to be learned, you need to have gone to a particular school to be able to have the mind of innovation, or you need to be told what to do on an innovation thought by somebody else, because at the end of the day we are all individuals. But I have realized that a lot of innovations comes through triggered by unexpected events. Earlier on, the doctor spoke about the innovation that came due to COVID. And I think we all have a lot of those examples that came through because of that unexpected event, where people had to find means to survive. That goes into the next point to say, the future projections. How will the future look like? From now on, definitely we might not go back to work anymore. We might not be physical with anybody anymore. How are we going to survive? And then innovations come in there as a form of survival, because then people start thinking about how to survive. And then in the technological space, it becomes a parachute for all the solutions that have been put in place that people have been scared to adopt because they had an option. When the option is taken away, innovation comes naturally, almost from everybody. And one thing to add on that is that in anything that we do around innovation, we need to be able to make sure that it's user-centered designs. Because if any innovation is not addressing a particular problem, is not solving a particular problem, is not addressing a particular challenge, it's useless. It has to address the need of whatever solution that you are putting for. And in this instance, our economic challenges needs that kind of intervention. I'm not sure if there's anything I've missed, but I tried to talk to the ones that I could see on the screen and the ones that I have noted down. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabalala. Let me then take this opportunity to invite Professor Busani Maweni, who is the principal of the National School of Government, to give us some closing remarks and to officially close this session. Let me thank the panelists. Let me thank Dr. Phil Mujwaha and Mr. Tsidiso Matona, and also yourself, Dr. Poppy Chabalala, for your inputs and the engagements from all of you online and physically. Professor Maweni?
Thank you, Program Director, Dr. Maja, the DG Mjwaha, or his ambassador now, Ambassador Mjwaha, and then the two colleagues, the senior fellow of the NSG, which is DG Matuna, Commissioner of BEE Commission. It's easy for him because he is across the road. So each time we need him, he comes here. We're going to do a coffee shop very soon. So hope you can spend more time here. And then Poppy Shabalala from Vodacom. She used to be CIO at the DTI as well as at UNISA. Thanks to everybody for coming, including the Deputy Chair of the NYDA, Karabo, who is here, and many others. So I'm not going to summarize what has been said, but just to say the purpose of these conversations, colleagues, is to just open an intimate space for people who've served in government to come and share their insights, their journeys, and for them to talk about in retrospect, this is what I have done. This has been the experience. And of course, there are successes and challenges as well. Dr. Mjwara is now the fellow of the NSG, so we'll have a lot more of him in our conversations. But we're a school, so we're also creating content. So we'll curate some of the content from that input, and in the program that Dr. Paile, who's responsible for the AIP, is doing, some of that content will feature there. Some may ask, are we only bringing people who are talking about the good story? We will also have some people who also tell the other side of the story, the challenges that were experienced, the hits and misses. As you are aware, that's one of the case studies that we use, written by the DG of Water Affairs, Sean Phillips, is a case study of that is not necessarily a pleasant one. If you read the entire story, his own experience at GRA and what happened there. So we'll have a series of those. We've started also doing interviews with the ministers. I've done Minister Dlamini Zuma. I'm going to do Minister Pando, and there will be several others as well. And we are posing more or less similar questions to them. So when we do the programs that we have designed for ministers, DMs, and other political officials, we can then use that content, that material. In fact, there are some similarities between the last part of Mjwara's input with what Dr. Nkosana Dlamini Zuma said when I did an interview with her, and she was very emphatic. She said that her 30 years in government was characterized by just hiring good talent, by making good choices about the people that she hired and worked with. So whatever we think her own programs might have succeeded or not, she said from day one when she became a health minister, Madiba said to him, go and hire good people and you will succeed. And you heard the story of Mjwara, you heard the story actually of DG Maduna as well. Look, this thing of succession planning is a tricky one. I mean, I won't delve into many others just to answer that part, because here the NSG we have engaged with it. So my argument was, and at first when I started the conversation, people thought I was being an ageist. I think the responsibility of every manager, so of course, accounting officers, but also everybody in management in general, is to do succession planning by answering one basic question. If you leave tomorrow, the 5 people reporting to you, will they meet the minimum requirements to make a short list for your position? If you're a manager and you have people who've worked with you for 10 years, a job is advertised, they don't qualify, you are a terrible guy or a woman. Because succession planning is about preparing people such that when you leave, any of them can replace you because you have invested in them to make sure they can make the short list. But the worst thing that could happen in a department or any institution is that the leader leaves and no one, if the deputies can't even act. Of course, unless they are new, you know, like because they may not meet the requirements and so on. There are those terrible rules in government, very stupid rule that someone who's a DDG for 6 months can't act as DG. I mean, it does nothing for the state, actually. You can actually skip a DDG and say they don't qualify and have a chief director act when the DDGs are there because they've been there for less than a particular defined period. So my view is a simple one, and we've experimented it here at the NSG. In a way, it sets up the managers against those to whom they report. Because as a manager, you can't refuse now to sign for someone who wants to go for training. You can't refuse people who want to be exposed or to go to a conference, because everybody must make the short list. I mean, at least if people have been there for a minimum period as would be required. And so that is how I think we should pursue it in the public sector. That's where there's an obligation on both the manager as well as those who are being managed to take opportunities of self-development seriously. And this is part of that space for engaging, which helps people, because you can imagine what Mjoka would have said one day when he writes a book, you'll spend a month or so reading a book, and how he has said it, you can see that it is a book in the making. And thanks, Matuna, in the manner in which you responded, I think was very useful, and how you summarized it. It's important because one of the big challenges we have in the public sector, as far as leadership is concerned, is the issue of fellowship. There are DGs who just kind of tea with their DDGs. And there are DDGs who kind of tea with their chief directors and directors, because there's just no fellowship in the organization. And that's not mean friendship, but some of you are, you go to church, and so you define fellowship differently. But the ability to relate, to understand each other, the fact that you can make a phone call, and the fact that if you are sitting together, you can have tea together, and have an understanding that the person may have to leave early because there are these pressures. In many public sector institutions, that fellowship isn't there. And one of the distinct things about the FOSAT, as you explained it at the time, was that there was a lot of fellowship. Of course, Cape Town helped because you spend half the time in Cape Town, so you could meet DGs regularly every afternoon. There's a number of bars and eateries. Now Cape Town is, after the COVID and the tragedy of burning of Parliament, we hardly interact. As a result, you could go to FOSAT and see a DG that you are meeting for the first time. Actually, and in provinces, it's even worse because of how people reside. So thanks for that, and thanks also to Bobi Shabalala, also for bringing in the private sector perspective into the conversation. So this is it, colleagues. Our masterclass series for the year ends today. We will have more next year. We will continue to do hybrid so people can come into this space, and those who are also online will continue to participate online. We have great speakers lined up for next year. We will communicate those. In fact, I think by end of January, we'll have a full schedule for the full year. We do want you to attend so that you can ask questions and interact, and to show so these people we are calling here are not robots or monsters, and it is free for everybody to engage. We open them up even to the members of the public, those who are curious about understanding the state. Next year, we will make sure that when these sessions are happening, through our SAPAM network, that you could have this session and the students in a class of public administration somewhere could then be tuned in. We've tried it this year twice and it worked. So we will broaden the participation, including among students, by giving them the link so they can participate virtually as well. So thank you very much, colleagues. Lunch is served. Have a good year, whatever remains of it. See you again next year. Thank you.